What is up, everyone? We are back for another NASCAR breakdown podcast. Today, we're taking a look at the Cookout 400 at Martinsville for DFS and DraftKings purposes. This is the DFS Army NASCAR breakdown show, and my name is the Geek, and I've got Taco here with me, motorsports expert extraordinaire, to break down the Martinsville race, a little short track. Taco, they call this one the paperclip?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're at the paperclip, guys, but we got to talk about the Richmond that were created in Richmond last week. What's up?
They went west of Richmond this week.
We are west
they're
of
still
Richmond.
In Virginia, but we were headed west.
Yeah, and I just want to shout out. I want to shout out Cookout, multi-time winner. Only 20 lineups here, Taco, in the engineer. Took second.
Yeah, we crushed everything last week.
Yeah, all three. It was really just a great week. Even your boy, this guy, hello,
Andy,
same score. This is what it looks like when you do it in the $5 contest instead of the $15 contest. I mean, I feel like the $15 contest was a better return.
Yeah, it's close.
3x. Let's see. Let's do the math, Taco. 2,800 times 3, 9K, 11K. So it was close.
It was close.
Close on the math. We killed it. That's why I reminded myself, because we've been doing this week after week after week. If you're part of DFS Army in the NASCAR, and we've had a great weekend of Martinsville so far. I feel like the trucks and the Xfinity went kind of according to plan.
Yep. Those are way more wrecky, way more carnagey than here.
Yeah, and those were a little more sketch. So we're at a track that's we should have, like, I think this is going to go a little chalky, Taco. We're going to see.
Yeah.
But
chalk's expensive too.
Wisely. But let's get into this thing. Okay, so what we like to do, DFS Army Breakdown Pod, and I'm going to say this early this time, guys, hit the like button if you're watching this. Subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. If you haven't done, especially my DFS Army subscribers already, that you're part of our Discord, make sure you're also subscribed to this channel and you got that notification bell. If you are a DFS Army super fan, you'd like to watch these shows and watch these breakdowns and get all the insights. We got a big UFC coming up this weekend as well. You don't want to miss the breakdown, UFC 300. But let's get into this one, Taco, and I'm going right to the research station here. So we are at Martinsville. What is unique about this track for those who haven't participated in the trucks and Xfinity throughout the weekend?
So Martinsville, it's a half miler. The only other half miler we have is Bristol, but it's quite different than Bristol. It's actually very hard to compare them. It's the flattest, the shortest. We get 400 laps. Unlike Bristol, we had 500 laps, but there we had the severe tire wear. Here, tire wear isn't as big of an issue, and just starting track position. It's
not an issue at all.
This is the best track for starting position of any track.
There we go.
The best track for pole sitters on DraftKings. And then you have the dynamic of on FanDuel, there's 400 laps, so everyone scores kind of equally, and there's a big scoring difference between the two sites. This is like our third short flat track in like 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, in like 4 weeks. So we've been at this track type, but Martinsville is kind of the one that sticks out because it doesn't exactly race like the other ones. Richmond, Phoenix, New Hampshire, and we're adding Iowa to that list. All very similar tracks. Here at Martinsville, there's less of that tire wear, less of like the good guys coming up front. You can see guys that are not the fastest car on the track lead because of how dominant the inside lane is. Perfect example, last year we saw all of Stewart Haas qualify really well, and they were able to just choo-choo train and put Ryan Preece up front for like 150 laps.
Killer Preece.
That's something we're never going to see at Dover, Richmond, Phoenix. It just doesn't really happen. But you can just kind of run single file, very boring. This has been one of the more boring tracks since the switch to the next gen for sure. And kind of the meta of how to drive around here has turned into like, a lot of shifting, way more aggressive, way more on throttle time on these laps. But still, unless you're Ross Chastain just doing a now banned move, just flying around on the outside, there really isn't too many ways to get past people in the green flag.
Ross Chastain's
the Hail Melon.
His signature move has been banned.
It's been banned.
That's messed up.
No, it makes sense. You could really hurt yourself doing that, but nonetheless, you don't really see track position changing a whole lot. You will be able to pass people eventually on these long runs, but Richmond and Phoenix especially, those guys it was way easier for them to pass them here, especially in the next gen cards. Like, been kind of boring, and really you make all your progress on like pit road.
Let me ask you about practice times here, Taco. Number one, how predictive are practice times in general? I know that we've had a little bit, on the weekend races, somewhat predictive, but maybe not the end all be all, but it's been somewhat predictive. So how do you think that's gone? And I do see here as I look at the practice times that it looks like the A group had like a little bit of a faster run, except for Hamlin and Larson, who were flying in the B group.
Yeah, so there was a bit of a difference there, and yeah, we know the two best guys in the practice for sure were Hamlin and Larson. They were in the slower B group, but still just absolutely dominated, especially in the late run there. So those two most expensive guys in the board.
Ty Gibbs hanging out. Yeah, Ty Gibbs with a fast car.
Yeah. So here at Martinsville, things tend to get settled out pretty easily. There's a lot of speed on the restart, like the short run speed that matters a bit more than at the other tracks, where the longer run speed really shines through, like we just saw at Richmond. So there are multiple ways you can go about it. If it goes green forever, that long run speed will eventually shine through, like we saw last time we were here, like halfway through the race. Blaney just had great long run speed. It was a long green flag run. Eventually he was able to overcome and pass Hamlin. It does happen. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. But usually this thing just gets mixed up because of mixed pit strategies and a bunch of like single car spins. As far as cautions go here, the last 4 Xfinity races, there were 15, 10, 14, and 16 cautions. Truck race about the same there. So just know it's not going to be anything like the first 2 races we've seen this week, because since the switch to the next gen car, the last 4 races here, we've had 7, 5, 6, and 4 cautions. That's
so little. So
very little compared to the lower 2 series.
Here,
so expect some green flag rounds.
I mean, 7 cautions, 6. That is, multiple cars multiple laps behind territory if it goes that way. So, some of that strategy for the shitters is probably going to be just like catch the one that doesn't get lapped like crazy. Let's look at the averages by starting position once again. And this is always, like, for me, the first place that I do my research. It's really, really important. And here I'm seeing a couple things here. I'm seeing some trends here, Taco. So number one, the pole sitter looks like, and not just the top 5 or 6, and this happened over the weekend as well. The top sort of 5, they score well.
First and third do really well because they start on the inside, and that is inherently strong. You've got teammates starting first and third this week in Larson and Elliott. So the beginning of this race, I think most people expect it to go one way, and it'd be really weird if it doesn't.
Yeah, and Elliott's got a pretty quick car too. So it's going to be really interesting off the rip, so to speak. I think a lot of the strategy is going to be like, are you Larsoning or not? That's going to be like a major part based on what we'll talk about later in the starting positions. But like, again, average by starting position, it's really important to just absorb this. Starting further behind is not an advantage on this track at all. It's a disadvantage, of course, unless you're Chandler Smith in Xfinity yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a stud,
a lot of guys came from the rear of that race because there's so many cautions.
Yeah, and it was cautions, but also if you're a stud starting in the back, fine by me, right?
Yeah.
But as far as
we don't really have any of those this week,
which is it's kind of better because you don't have to make that decision.
We got some guys starting like in the 20s.
Or
right mid pack, Byron Bell, but nothing too crazy. Just Busher starting the back, and he's just like a 9th place dude.
It's not a NASCAR race unless Bubba's pit crew is screwing him.
Yeah, it's just probably not the week to play Reddick or Bubba then, because this is very much a pit crew diff kind of race. One pit penalty will absolutely screw you here.
We saw on the track yesterday, Christian Ecke's, hanging out there because he wants some points, stage points, and rolling the dice for a caution, which ended up working out. But
he ended up winning all 3 stages. He just had the best truck by a long shot.
And then we saw so that was with Aggies in the truck, and then yesterday we saw the fastest truck just in the top 5 just took that lead and owned it. And yesterday was Almirola. So we're going to talk about that group up front.
Yeah, it's not going to be as profound of a difference as we see in the lower series.
There we go. Yeah, and we'll talk about that group up front. I'm trying to think if there's any other. So let me ask you this: this is a unique track. It's a short track. Do we have drivers and do we have a numeric indicator of who's specifically really good at this? There's shifting involved here. You're doing things that you don't do on every other track, right? So who are the drivers that are really good at this?
I think we need to look at it from a manufacturer and then like a team perspective, because the odds have shifted a lot this week. Recently we've seen like Ford be as bad as like plus 700. Ford is extremely good here because Penske historically has done really well here. Look at Keselowski's track history. The last 4 races since he switched to RFK, not so great, but before that, just nothing but amazing track history. Logano, Blaney, those guys absolutely crush it. And then Stewart-Haas racing. We saw it last year. Last year, Stewart-Haas dominated this entire race.
Stewart-Haas was shit all year except for this one race.
Briscoe, they all just crushed.
Yeah, this was their only good track.
Look at Briscoe's odds.
Yeah, that is bananas. That's nuts.
So you've got those guys competitive where if it was like an intermediate track or something, they would be like 200 to 1. You don't even think about them. So, playing guys like Hamlin, Larson, they're just a little bit shallowed out this week because usually there's like a smaller group of guys that can compete. Like last week, it was pretty much just like the Toyotas. There's kind of a bigger pool of like guys that can get up and run up front, because you can also just get up front through pit strategy and just stay up front because you're there, because it's very hard to pass. So it kind of shakes things up a little bit compared to these other tracks that we've been going to.
Are you saying that I'm going to have to pay attention to Briscoe starting 5th? Normally I would unfriend him.
Certainly. I think me and Brady both have him as a core play.
Oh my goodness.
He's been monstrous.
Oh, Lord.
Monstrous at this track.
Makes me regret reserving lineups for this.
I know. But you get to play a lot of Killer Priest too, which I know you love.
I do love Killer Priest. And I did see my boy Colo Can't Quit You in a good position as well. So that one's the one I'm the most excited about. Is Colo.
Starting all the way in the back.
Yeah.
Now, there are like 2 different ways this race could shake out, because we have seen rarely, but at the end of last year's race, there was a gigantic crash on the restart. That can happen. We saw it yesterday in the Xfinity race multiple times. If there's a more carnage race like that, then that's going to really help those plays like LaJoy, Burton starting in the very, very back. But for the most part, you're just throwing those guys in there just so you can afford like some Hamlin Larson shares, because, the way that DraftKings does it, the more laps there are, the higher these guys get priced. Now, realistically, Hamlin, Larson, these guys should be like 12, 13K to actually make it kind of fair. But you really don't know who's going to be on the pole position. It could be any of like the top 10 guys. But if they did pricing after qualifying, then Larson would be like 13, 14K.
Yeah, let's get into this. So we've already seen a couple of the races on this track, and the pole sitter. So it's funny, over the course of this weekend, the pole sitters did not hold. Like Xfinity and truck, it doesn't really matter that much, but they didn't hold the spot. What was more important was that effectively in every single race of this weekend so far, actually, let's go to historical.
Well, to be fair, the Xfinity race you can throw out because the pole sitter went to the rear.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Multiple guys that went to the rear and
it just randomly didn't work out, right? Yeah. The pole sitter goes to the rear, or in the second race, it was a shitty pole sitter anyway. So hang on a second. Let me do this here. Let's look at the recent races. Holy shit.
Just do race C to A.
What is going on here? Hold on. Wait. Martin Truex once scored 235 points on this track?
Yeah, we've had guys lead. Well, there was a certain package back in like 2016. where we saw guys lead like 3, 4, 500. That's when like I think Truex like went on a few weeks later to lead like almost 500 at the Coke 600 or whatever it was, broke the record. Not going to be seeing anything like that in the next gen car. We've seen split domination. It's been pretty consistent. We see 200 plus lead lap dominators, so it's kind of split domination across the board. Usually, every guy that leads the first chunk, and then a guy that leads like the second chunk, or just gets in there through pit strategy. I think Blaney did pass Hamlin on speed, but there were a few more cautions in that race than some of the previous ones.
It's interesting.
We also saw Amarola lead pretty early, a lot of laps. Another Stewart Haas racing guy, and then Elliott. You'll see his name on here quite a bit because he does a lot of leading at this track.
Looking at the previous race, it's interesting in the 2023 version here that we actually didn't get the drivers starting up front effectively dominating that had happened at least over the weekend in a lot of these tracks. Let's get a look at some of these historicals though. So
so Truex is actually pretty bad at this track, especially recently.
Interesting.
So yeah, he had the weakest pole sitter performance of anyone so far, but Priest, he ended up getting knocked down to 15th place finish here. But you see this is the spring race last year where it was just Stewart Haas crushing everyone.
Okay, here we go. So we had to go back to 2022, and that's when you get Larson starting. So we had a similar situation. This looks very similar to this week, actually, with Larson having started in first, finished in second,
in 20th, like this week.
Yeah,
Elliott's right there with him, like this week.
That's right, and there's Hamlin. So this race kind of mirrors the one that we're seeing, and but
the only difference is it's the final race of the second to last round of the playoffs, so it kind of races a little bit differently because it's right before the championship race at Phoenix.
There we go. So yeah, it looks like a lot of different approaches, but the race in 2022 looks kind of the most similar to me, with all these studs starting up front and also kind of hanging around up front and getting some lead laps and whatnot. But let's get into this one. And let's go top down, talk. Get a sense of who the studs are. And again, in some of the other races, we really had to pay close attention to kind of the starting 5 or 6. And there it is. So you've got Larson on the pole, Truex in that mix, but Bubba, Briscoe, Chase Elliott.
There are some cheap options.
Definitely you could save some money if you go down to Bubba and Briscoe and you have the balls. And there's Josh Berry hanging out. So all the Stewart Haas guys really went around the track quickly.
How it's been ever since we switched to the next gen car.
Oh my goodness, 4.5 stars. So that's gonna be a tough one to pull the trigger on. So the expectation, you would say, is Larson comes out. I mean, you've got star after star after star on Larson here. How much Larson is too much? We've got a 43% ownership projection. It's probably going to be more than that, is my guess.
It's actually hard to get over on him. I think it's going to be a week where Hamlin goes under-owned again because of a Larson. It looks a lot like last week. And last week we saw Hamlin get kind of pathetically low, and he ends up winning the race. Hamlin, historically, the best here, the most lead laps, the most second most fast laps behind only Chase Elliott. He crushes here typically. He just crushed at the recent race. Like, we're all going to end up forgetting about him because it's so expensive and kind of hard to get to him. And Larson is just such a big, beautiful chalk that's gonna project out really well. I think Prize Picks gave him like 90, it was 98 lead laps. It's so much.
People don't realize.
Also, it's just an easy first dominator to get in there because he has like the most direct path. We kind of said it with all of these tracks, but this one especially so. It's just the pole sitter is going to get at least 50 lead laps. Now, whether or not you turn that 50 into 200, that's kind of on you, but he's starting in a really ideal spot because I don't think Bubba's going to have anything from on the outside. Could be wrong. There's always that 5% chance that Larson fucks up the restart, but with a teammate behind him and him being on the inside at Martinsville, like it's too good. This is like the surest place for the first place guy to stay up there. And also he has the first pit stall. He's got the best pit stall of anyone, with pits being so important here and just a great way to actually pass people because it's harder to pass it on the track. Always nice to have that first pit stall. So Larson chalk and Busher chalk, those two I think are going to be by far the chalkiest plays on the entire slate. We could see we're going to see one or two other guys creep into the 30s, but I'm not entirely sure who that's going to be. Will Briscoe really gain a whole bunch of steam based off those odds, or will people play even more place differential with guys like Bell and Byron who have recently dominated here? I think Bell and Byron both have like a 200 lead lap win at this track, like recently in this generation of car. And then a bunch of, poor performances outside of that. But still, they have those performances in their bag, and they're starting 20th. I think Bell did it when he started 20th. I think people will probably go like Larson and then one of those guys, then like a Busher, and it's a decent way to start. I kind of prefer going Larson into Hamlin, just because I think Hamlin's going to get forgotten again. I'd rather be over on him. And then, obviously Busher for cash because he's just going to be a 9th or 10th place kind of guy. But a lot of options for potentially sneaky guys. There are a few that I'm not really touching, like Keselowski, Kyle Busch, etc. But and I also don't really like Truex because he's not very good at this track in particular. But I see some Penske Fords. I think you can get some sneaky leverage on. Ryan Blaney's expensive, and he's like really, really good here. Fresh off some top runs here at this track, and has been just good at this track type. And then Logano, very similar to last week. He just has a handful of tracks that he is just really good at every year. Doesn't matter. Richmond, probably one of the absolute best of them. Lock him into the top 5. Here, just lock him into the top 7.
That might not be
he's
enough.
He's going to have the lower ownership. Yeah,
not be enough.
It's just that he starts up front, and just being up front is kind of key to getting the lead here. So all it takes is guys ahead of you fucking up or just getting a better pit or whatever. But just being there helps put you in the opportunity, because the only other way to get up front is to do like weird contrarian pit strategies, which I guess is where like Keselowski would come in. But even still, I have a hard time stomaching him in that range.
Keselowski doesn't still have that pit team that was really or that crew chief.
He was on when he was on Penske, he was crushing it here, and he's been pretty awful in RFK.
I think that the big threat. So let's talk about off the bat. You've got Larson, and everybody thinks he's going to take the lead and hold it.
Mm-hmm.
He's going up against Chase Elliott in the outside lane. Bubba Wallace is hanging around, and Chase Briscoe and Truex as well. So we all expect Larson to grab that lead and just hold it for 80, 90 laps. And that's what it is. You snap off laps in this place in seconds. You're like, you blink your eyes, you go to get a beer, come back, they're like at lap 24. You're like, whoa. 24 laps led already, right? It happens fast. What if Larson doesn't get it? Who do we think is the most likely other guy? Again, kind of like Eckes the other day. He wasn't on the pole. He was starting third. Is it Chase Elliott? Could Chase Elliott be that guy that fucking blows your mind on this track, takes the lead? And
we all kind of expected last week to be a spot where Chase Elliott could do that, but he really underperformed in like a prime spot at a track that he's a lead at. And it's the exact same situation this week, except he's even more good at this track. He's been absolutely crushing this track. Looking back at his last few races here, let me do. Yeah, so his last race, 83 lead laps, 28 fast laps. Wrecked out of the spring race here, or just had a bad race, only 3 fast laps. But before that, 54 lead laps, 53 fast laps, 185 lead laps, 69 fast laps, 289 lead laps, 97 fast laps. Go back to 2020, 236 lead laps, 110 fast laps. Like, this has been by far his best short track. And those kind of numbers are, he's been in such a slump lately. Like, if he doesn't do well here, then where on earth will he do well at? Because like the numbers don't really get any better for him.
This might be that time.
But Bubba, you've also got to give credit to Bubba, because just last week at Richmond, we saw flashes of him being able to take the lead off the restart, and his long run speed was not very good in practice. But what we did see is he was first in 3 and 5 lap average, second in 10 lap average, and then fell off pretty significantly after that. But if you've only got short run speed going on, I mean, that's kind of how you get the lead here. Again, super hard to do that. You saw how nerfed second place was here. They just it's very hard to take the lead from first, especially when he's got a teammate behind him. So I mean, like 80% of the time or whatever, Larson, runs away with it. Maybe like 5% of the time there's like a wreck, lap 1 or 2 or some bullshit, and then sometimes Bubba's gonna take it, sometimes Elliot's gonna take it. Yeah, there are those like percent chances, and if Bubba gets out there, I could see him like leading, the first like 40 laps or whatever. He's like capable of that. He's been fast. He showed like short run speed, at least in practice, and then he can just block for a while. But long term, like, he's going to go back to like 10th to 12th, somewhere in there. But Chase Elliott, again, it's just, you keep expecting this breakout race, and it just hasn't been happening. Just been slumping. So it's like current form versus track history here with him. Larson's the only like bona fide guy that's recently dominated, starting up front, looked to be one of the fastest in practice. And I have to go back to, there's Truex starting 4th. He seemed to have short run speed over long run speed, but his long run speed was pretty, the fall off was kind of significant. I didn't really like what I saw from him there. And he hasn't been that great at this track either in the next gen car, at least compared to like other short tracks. So I'm not really as big on Truex this week, but he could be another one of those guys that has the 5% chance of like leading early or whatever. But it just seems really easy for Larson stage 1, at least. That's kind of like the obvious call here, but I do just see Hamlin also getting involved, like, or Blaney, Logano, these guys. I could see them after a while really factoring in. They're only going to factor in like first thing. And I wish we had like stage 1 props. Don't really get them very often, but that would kind of be telling of what to expect. But I just imagine Larson would be a huge favorite for that.
Yeah, it seems like strategy is going to be really picking the 2 dominators here that find their way up there. One would assume Larson would be one of them, which kind of speaks to what you said before about Hamlin. Once you've got Larson in there, it's kind of hard to afford Hamlin, I think, or at least it's hard to afford him and then another kind of semi-stud or 2 in that lineup. Just the 2 most expensive drivers is never, is never going to be easy to build around. So you have
that's what kind of makes Bubba and Briscoe appealing, because they're cheap enough that they don't even need to lead like a significant amount of laps. They just need like a top 5 finish with some fast laps along the way. And Briscoe has been very consistent about every race in the next gen car here. If he leads, he leads, but even when he doesn't lead, he's getting like 20 fast laps every time. And those really add up for DraftKings. And he's come top 10 every single time. So he's actually been like a beacon of consistency, but only at this track type.
Choose wisely in the top group. In the top group is really what it comes down to. I think you're going to want 2 of these names most likely in most lineups. And then we get to Chris Buescher starting 30th. Stiff guy. Him and his partner in crime, I think McDowell is also starting kind of far back, if I remember. Yeah, there we go.
He's real cheap, but I feel like we've had to use him a lot, and he's kind of he's not worked when he's been chalk. I'm very inclined to just kind of keep on going, but I know that'll be on people's minds.
You got to play him. You got to play him going starting for 35th. I don't care. Like at that price, we're playing him. Like, what are you gonna do, right? Like,
Buescher's cheap enough to where he fits in as a third option.
Yes. Starting 30th, and he's been good here, Taco.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so
it's just this track type. Him and Briscoe kind of do the same thing, but yeah, like Buescher has 5 straight top 10 finishes at this track type coming into this. Was 8th here last year, 14th in the spring race. Like he's gonna run like 10th place to 12th place. That's just what he does, kind of. So he's fine. or whatever. He's going to go like 30th to 15th. He's going to score pretty damn well. At 8,600, I guess if like one of the guys in that range end up dominating, or like Hamlin and Larson do it together and you need to go down from him, he could not work because he's a little bit pricey there, but he kind of just fits in really nicely as a third option. And going 2 dominators and then Busher just seems better than going 3 dominators here with only 400 laps. And if it was 500, you'd be more inclined to go the 3.
The more Larson just kind of owns this track or something like that, the less likely it is paying up for one of these other guys is going to work. So that leaves you with, do we consider Wallace and Briscoe dominators? I mean, they are.
Yeah. Briscoe has like actually dominated here recently.
Yeah. I mean, if it's Briscoe and Larson, like if it's one of these guys, that's such a cheap combo that it actually does open up some other interesting strategies. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out early on. You got a quadruple of kind of fades here marked on the sheet. Reddick, Chastain, not a fan, doesn't like this track.
Yeah, there are a few guys like that. Like Reddick also, same boat. I think his best finish here the next gen is 18th.
Sneak in there.
Kyle Busch, fast laps. He's been he's gonna be so happy we're done with these short flat tracks because he's so good everywhere else. But right now, Reddick and Kyle Busch certainly are just not feeling themselves. RCR as a team, I'm very concerned about. Like Chevy just seems downtrodden this year. Like when do you see them as the lowest on the manufacturer favorites? That like never happens.
Well, I mean, come on, Larson's in a Chevy. It can't be that bad.
Yep, it can't be. But it's really just Hendrick. Your lower level Chevy teams just look pretty bad this week. Trackhouse does not look very good at this track. RCR has looked absolutely pathetic. Kyle Busch has been just awful, just plain awful this year. So I don't think anyone's playing him. He's like just the ultimate fuck this guy. I'm playing him at 5% owned or whatever kind of play. And that's like the reason you play him.
He could sneak in there, but he's starting in a rough spot. 11th. He's not starting in a location where
just slow again. You can see it in practice.
Yeah,
he's just slow once where he's 32nd in practice. Like something's really off with that team.
If Busch was 8,100 and starting 25th, I don't give a shit. I'm playing him. You know, but starting 11th, he kind of has to finish in the top 3, 4, 5 to even have a discussion.
And he's like right there in pricing with Busher and more expensive than like Briscoe. It's going to be hard for him.
Not a good spot at all. Bowman, another guy, kind of. I like Bowman when he starts in the 20s.
I like him at high tire wear tracks. This track type, he really hasn't been all that good. He hasn't had a top 15 finish since Richmond late last year at this track type, but he was in the A group that looked pretty decent in practice, so his practice times are a little bit inflated, but I don't really see much here. I'm definitely more interested in Briscoe, and then Bubba is going to be like either just a boomer bust. Like you play him, you splash him in there just a little bit, just in case he like leads some early or he finishes like 4th or something.
Here's why. Yeah, this is exactly why you play Bubba, because the first look at him is like, I'm not playing Bubba starting second. He's going to move back to 10th or 11th. You're kind of thinking that's the most likely thing. But what if he does it? What if he takes the lead?
You just want to be underweight. You don't want to fade.
Yeah.
When you're starting, when the guy's starting second.
He takes the lead, and then you're watching.
We just saw that last week, and I think it ended early because there was like a caution or whatever. But we've seen him like win restarts.
You'll be cursing yourself like, oh shit, Bubba's in for, and then he's holding it, and you're watching him lead laps, and you didn't have any exposure, and you're like, ah, man, so that to me is the primary thing with Bubba. It's just like he's starting second.
Upside is there, just the downside is huge.
GPP only all day. I feel the same about Briscoe. Like, starting 5th.
Briscoe's way safer.
He's got amazing win odds here. 13-1 for $7,500. Look at
the fastest long. Well, he was in Group A, but he still had the fastest 20 lap average.
SHR brings
average speed. Top 10, all 4 races here in the next gen car. Top 4, every single one of them. And I think he's had the best. He had the best average running position in both races last year. Just started, but he in all those races he started like top 5. Starting top 5 once again. I think the trend just kind of continues here. Maybe unless he gets taken out, it seems like if the trend really does continue, should be like 8th or 9th place at worst, maybe 10th place.
Wait, let's go back.
You'll kind of almost take that at 7,500 if it comes with his usual allotment of like 20 to 30 fast laps, which we've seen at every single race in the next gen car here.
Briscoe in 2023 started 3rd, finished in 4th, average run position 6th, just outside of the nuts, but very close, and didn't lead laps.
But he got those 20 fast laps. So
yeah, he got some.
And that's what we're really looking at here, because he's doing that consistently.
Here's Briscoe on the previous track, the previous race last year. Started 4th, ends in 5th, but in this case leads a bunch of laps and winds up scoring the most out of any driver on the course, number 1. So there it is. Briscoe keeps popping up in the top 6 or top 7 here. Both of the last 2 tracks started in a similar spot. So I mean, man, we've seen it. We've seen it done. I would not avoid this.
That kind of track history with this being such a specialty track, it makes a lot of sense that he's able to keep doing that over and over. I think he should have been more expensive.
He's been doing it
like $8K
from this location.
He got the respect at Phoenix. He didn't get that respect here. He's just priced kind of like normal. And all the Stewart Haas guys are together, even though they have wildly different odds.
Look at the win odds. At 7,500, you're getting 13-1 win odds with Chase Briscoe. You know, you got to pay $10K to get those odds with.
He has better odds than Bell and Byron. Just let that sink in.
That's right. And now again, I got some play stiff upside with Bell and Byron, so fine. But I mean, that's a big difference.
With 400 laps, and when you're paying like $9K plus for a driver, it doesn't matter what their place differential is, unless they started like 37th or something.
It seems that, well, again, let's go back to the historical, but
most likely the people you're spending fuck tons of money on are going to be your guys leading 150 laps, like Blaney, Hamlin right here. That's where all your money needed to go.
Here it goes again. Going back to the historical, this is the best way to understand these tracks.
It is also worth noting Eric Almirola, extremely good here. Won the Xfinity race. He's no longer in the field, so it kind of allows for, just a +1 free spot for all those more mid-tier drivers that would usually finish behind Almirola at one of his absolute best tracks. But maybe Gregson's got something to say about that. We'll see.
I'm trying to look at the lead laps, and so in the most recent, you got 145, 150. Yeah. So most
just
of the
Almirola being core for me here every single year, and now it's like, I got to find a new core.
Let's see here. What happened here with Killer Priest, man? He had 130 laps, still barely squeezed in to the nuts. Chase Briscoe in the more recent one, but you do see as we go to the top
nuts,
scores,
he was like 5K, 6K.
They're all leading laps, so these top scorers are all. It's not been play stiff that's putting them in the top group. Yeah, here we go. This is the one where Willie Byron just owned it, and Chase Elliott, and then everybody else. But that's where you got some play stiff guys in there, in those higher scoring ones where just 2 people took the entire domination. Or here one where Denny Hamlin just finished poorly and Chase Elliott dominated. So I'm just kind of trying to.
That could happen as well, which is kind of what makes me scared to force in 2 dominators, because there's always the potential for the pole sitter to lead 150 and then wreck and finish 30th.
Let's talk about some of the secondary guys, some of the cheaper options. You mentioned Killer Priest before. SHR, Noah Gragson, SHR Fords, right? Both good starting spots.
Probably they're all conveniently put together for us.
Yeah, really. I mean, like, what the hell? All the SHR cars, right? But SHR is good here, right? So you've got Josh Berry starting in the weird place, 7th. I don't know if I'm going to full fade that, but like, it doesn't seem as high upside as Priest and Gragson starting with some play stiff upside.
He's in Harvick's car here, and Harvick was the one Stewart Haas racing car that didn't succeed here.
That could have just
in the next gen car, but it's hard to assign value to Berry based on like Harvick's work, because we've seen him actually kind of pop off recently. It's still such a new ride that it's going to be hard to project someone like him. But starting 7th, he's I don't know how he's going to pull it off. But I mean, we trust Briscoe too. He may have like an outside chance. Maybe just like a little tiny splash or whatever. But he's not going to be very high owned anyway. Briscoe just makes a lot more sense because he's like absolutely bona fide here.
Which one? Briscoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Briscoe, and look at the odds difference. But, I mean, you kind of get Josh Berry for cheaper with Gragson and Priest starting 26th. And I mean, it's tough to justify Berry here when Priest has effectively the same win odds, but starting 22nd for cheaper. Like, just the math.
Berry's just a touch expensive on DraftKings. Like, I don't know how you'd make it work. And then obviously on FanDuel, he'd be a bad play starting way too high.
Yeah, I think it's these other two. So you prefer Gragson to Killer Priest? Any reason other than just he's a little cheaper or starting a little bit further back?
He's finished 12th at both of the short flat tracks so far this season. He's had really surprising strong speed. He's in the Almirola car, which, I mean, if there's any leftover juice from like his run here, that would be pretty cool. Not relying on that, but also just he looked pretty good in the long run. Priest obviously was like amazing in practice.
That's not obvious. You got to share that with us.
Yeah, well, it's on the research station, but yeah, he's he crushed in practice in that A group. He's starting 22nd, a little bit further up, but he's been struggling from what we saw, like Richmond and Phoenix, as where Gragson has been thriving. So yeah, the odds are definitely in the favor of Priest. Probably just respect for all those laps that he led here just last year. So that all makes sense. I still just prefer. I guess I just prefer the price drop and the extra place differential afforded you by Gragson. He's like more, maybe a touch more high upside.
I don't see a ton of difference between these two, Taco, but neither did you. I mean, they're very close. You have them in similar play, so I'm going with it. I'm not going to make that big of a issue over a half star difference. They're both good plays starting here. Maybe slight. Looks like you have a slight little nod to Gragson, but I do think it's noteworthy that Priest is just slightly better appreciated by the odds makers.
Yeah, Gragson just projected for a touch more for cheaper.
There we go. So you see the big odds drop right after Gragson. Massive, right? Now we're into the 100, 200 to 1 zone. D-Swizz starting 21st, nondescript starting spot. It looks like Austin are just poisoned for lineups this season. I don't know. I can't click.
Cedric might actually do okay. He's someone I'm kind of worried about. Like, I couldn't put the full fade on him because he has I think last year he had a 9th, and the year before he had like an 11th here. And just Penske is just really, really good at this track.
That's Cindric.
So I wouldn't completely count Cindric out, but yeah, he qualified too high.
3%.
He's in such an awkward spot, and he's 250 to 1. That's pretty bad.
Horrible odds. Horrible owner. The only thing going for him is ownership. The one that surprises me out of this group, I mean, Jones, again, too high up, a little too high starting point, fine. Nemechek, is he just generally bad here? What's the story? It's starting 29th. You think that Nemechek might be of interest?
Well, starting position matters so much here. And once you if you're starting near the 30s, unless you are like in a really good car that can probably stay or keep away from getting a lap, like I imagine McDowell is in, it's hard to see Nemechek not just being lap traffic sooner than later. And once you start to get down laps here, it's really sus. And just overall, the back of this field is just not very good. It's just when you're down here, there's like not very many other plays you can make.
How many cars are expected to finish on the lead lap?
There was odds for it. It was 21.5, and I think it was minus 120 in the favor of the under. And like minus 110 for the over.
Then you could just lock that number.
About like 20 cars.
So 20 cars on the lead lap. So let's say you're lapped, right? And you're McDowell or Colo, who are really the two drivers that I'm interested in for cheap, right? You're one of those guys in your lap. You still have a chance of even being lapped behind being in the high 20, like 20.
They don't want to see green flags. The thing.
No.
They want to see caution flags flying.
But
that's going to help their scoring a lot.
Let's say you're Michael McDowell and you finish in 25th place. Okay. So we've got 10 place diff points. Another, 20. So that's about a 33.
Yeah, they get like 28 points.
Yeah. So he'll need to do better than that. I don't think a 28 or a 33 is going to cut it on this track. So they'll need to hold probably the lead lap. Colo as well, probably going to need to hold the lead lap in order to be relevant.
If you play someone like Gilliland or something, then they need to have like a top 15 finish to match a 25th for McDowell. And it's going to be easier for McDowell to get to 25th.
Yeah. Although, again, Gilliland starting here, but 200 to 1.
Gilliland's kind of been interesting this year because he's performed like pretty decently at places where he was not supposed to. And he was also fast in practice. The
only other thing that sticks out for me, so I think these are fades. You've got these fades here, and I agree. And then a fade. Unfriend you. Josh Williams. I didn't even know he was in the Cup Series.
But he's supposed to be full time this year.
There it is.
He's in that AJ Allmendinger car, but he's been pretty dreadful whenever it's not been AJ at a road course.
Harry Burton
in practice.
All of a sudden, in a sea of 1,000 to 1 odds finishers, we got Harry B. Starting 34th. I've got Taco, who hates Harry Burton.
Yes.
Literally giving him all these stars and all these accolades.
Too many.
That's a lot of accolades from you here, Taco. What the hell's going on?
I mean, so he's starting 34th, right? He's been pretty bad this season, sure. This track type, he actually has like a handful of top 20s, including a couple of top 15s at this track in the next gen car, which is pretty interesting. They're both in the fall races, but really just this entire range down there, if you're putting all the way at the bottom, they're all 1,000 to 1. Burton's 500 to 1 and starting almost at the very back. He's going to be like lap traffic, I guess, but he does seem to have like some upside. I would prefer LaJoy, right? But Burton's fine.
Can't quit Colo. This ain't the spot to quit Colo, but he'll probably be lapped.
Yeah. Also, the Fords are just kind of good. And, they're slightly Penske affiliated. They don't really get the Penske speed usually, but we saw both Cindric and Burton do really well at this track over the last couple of years. Just all the Penske cars been solid.
I don't think anybody else really down at the bottom carries much weight. I'm just giving a brief glance over to the Brady sheet. He's a little less high on these guys, even Colo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe than you are. Kind of has them all.
I kind of have to be because I really want my main stand to be like being overweight on Hamlin because I think Hamlin is someone that people are going to underplay just like last week, just because of his price.
And are you pairing up Hamlin with Kyle Larson and then needing a Colo, McDowell, Buescher kind of combination to make it work?
I mean, I got some that's just Hamlin, Larson, and Briscoe, and I think that works fine here. Starting position so massive, and that kind of allows you to do a lot of stuff.
When you're treating Briscoe as a dominator and he's 70 whatever 100,
yeah,
that just opens up some salary and allows
also
you to
just punting for him.
But I will say this: if Denny Hamlin doesn't lead a bunch of laps, he's going to be Corey Haim from Trucks. It's going to be the same. He's just
luckily no one's led as many laps at Martinsville in the next gen car than Denny Hamlin. I'm kind of hoping that happens again, just because again, he's really, really fucking good. Has some long run speed. Him and Larson just look to be the best cars in practice for sure, right? Everyone's going to be playing Larson. If Hamlin's going to have half the ownership, I just feel like going heavy on Hamlin is way easier than going heavy on Larson. And also, you've seen like the pole sitters. Yeah, they have a pretty safe, like stage one, just like that good chunk. But we have seen a lot of the big time dominators come from a little farther back. Usually, the guy that leads stage one will oftentimes want to stay out and get some stage points.
This whole race is this whole track is to Larson or not to Larson. Listen, I can make an argument for lock buttoning Larson and just playing him in every lineup.
Mm-hmm.
There's an argument for it because even when he falls back, he's good and he's a stud and he's a stud this season and he can get his way back up to the lead. He can get his way back up there, but the flip side argument is the same argument you're always going to make. I actually think, like I said, I think you're under on the ownership for Larson. I think it's going to go over 50%.
Was 11,200. So it's actually hard for people to afford him that high.
I don't know about that.
And you have Bell and Byron that are going to bring in a lot of ownership. Starting where they are and having the recent wins here, like dominating wins.
If you could get Hamlin into this lineup, it'd be the perfect lineup. But
you can't. That's why I think he's going to be low owned. I hope so.
It is hard to get Hamlin in there. So basically, with Larson in here, and just take a look at what I have on screen. I wanted to show this with Larson in there. It's just difficult to get Hamlin in, even with kind of punty rest of the lineup. It's very difficult to squeeze.
You gotta like triple punt or go all the way to the bottom or something weird, or just not play Busher.
Any third guy. Well, Busher, it's hard to give up on Busher. But
you'd have to be your fourth guy in this, and it's not like ideal.
Yeah, there's
I guess third.
I think the move here would be to go from Colo down to your guy, Harry B. Ooh.
See, optimizers are not going to like building like that, and people are definitely not going to like building like that because it's like, look what I got to do to fit these two guys. But
no, it doesn't really work.
Like,
even
if Larson and Hamlin lead 150 laps here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of lineups people feel like making. Those two are like the two favorites of the race. Probably the most likely guys to lead large chunks of laps. It's not that outlandish to think a situation like that could happen. And yeah, I'm kind of hoping that you like need Larson and Hamlin, and then those kind of lineups have a lot of good shots at if I can just like punt better than other people, which I think I can. That's at least the angle I'm taking on this.
Do you see how it's
maybe
hard
even just go with the field on Larson? I don't want to go under, but maybe I might just go with the field on Larson and take stands in other places because he. Like you said, he could be, he could be upwards like 50% owned in some contest.
My brief attempt, and you guys try this at home, so to speak, but my brief attempt on screen here, talking it through to kind of come up with a Larson Hamlin combo that looked that had rest of the guys. It's hard.
Yeah, leave some salary almost. Like I think my cash lineup left like $1,000.
Did it? Okay, I think I maybe know what you did because I think I ran well in a spot where you kind of were better off going down to Priest than maybe playing one of these guys. This is that zone here that gets a little scary in cash, like where you want to move back.
Yeah, so, usually Dylan starting 28th in cash would be like a move, but he's been so untrustworthy. It's like this whole range is just guys you don't really want to play.
It's a big gap. It's a weird big gap. So yeah, it would be normally you'd probably default here to Austin Dillon, but I don't like that. So I got some work to do here. Try to figure out how these lineups are going to Tetris their way together.
Unfortunately, we can't make as strong a stances here as we could at a more predictable place like Richmond.
How comfortable are you with Larson in terms of like the 50% range over or under?
Like playing Larson 50%?
Yeah.
That's fine, I guess. I don't think it'll really make or break you because again, he will be popular, but
he's gonna be the most popular. He's gonna be massively owned.
But this is just the best track for the pole sitter, so I understand.
We saw it yesterday.
Probably not the best place to just attack fading the pole sitter.
I don't mind fading a pole sitter.
Did work in trucks, but
I don't mind fading a pole sitter when the pole sitter is like some shitty driver. But it's tough to fade it when it's Larson.
Yeah, and he's got a shitty driver starting outside of him and teammate behind him. It's just the ideal spot. And then I don't think Truex really brings it either, but we can see.
If he's leading at the beginning and 10 laps in, he's going to be leading the first 60, 70 laps. When do they do the first pit stop here? Is it about 70, 80 laps?
I think it's 80 and then 120 and then like 220.
Yeah, so you're going to get like an 80 lap, an 80 lap.
You can make it. I mean, they're only going to pit if there's like a caution in stage one.
If he gets 70 laps, you're talking like 15, 17 fantasy points added to the score right off the bat. And even if he doesn't make his way to the lead again, actually, that's not a lock button, right? If he doesn't get back into the lead after that first initial 70, 80, he might not be in the nut. So it
depends on who else leads in that case.
Yeah. If Hamlin is so fast that he's just overtaking right off the bat and gets it, and then leads for 200 laps, it's going to be hard even for Larson with 100 laps. So to hold the nut position. So Yeah, it's going to be an interesting way to approach this. Who do you win bets before we roll?
So they actually Price Picks has like stage 1 cars passed. So like Hamlin starts 8th and they have him at 3.5, so they expect him to be 4th or 5th place by the time stage 1 ends, which is fine. It kind of matches his MO. Him and Byron are just going to slowly work their way up and then just end up running 3 by the end of it, because it's just kind of what they do. We've also had guys like Logano and Blaney that are super strong top 5 contenders. They even have Truex as moving up one, getting to 3rd. I'd probably go definitely less than that on that prop. But yeah, I kind of like to look like they're giving so much love to Larson. It's hard to see him not being just super chalk. Like when you see him with 98.5, but Hamlin starting 8th, Price Picks gave him 63.5 laps led and 33.5 fastest laps. That's like really good. And to think that people won't be playing that is kind of crazy. And he's got real potential to lead 100 plus.
Gotta get
the other guy with that potential historically is like Chase Elliott, but I think we're all kind of equally scared of him right now because he's just not been the driver he was this season.
Maybe it's
even late last season.
Maybe it's the best time to play him.
Yeah. Well, I think I played him last week or the week before, just hoping for a breakout, but
it was terrible.
It's coming.
It
was definitely last week because Kodo wasn't really with him.
No, I was on it. Yeah, a couple weeks ago we had him heavily, and it didn't work out very well. Made me hate him.
Phoenix.
I feel that way I feel like I've been chasing Kyle Busch's like 2021 season.
Kyle Busch, I am staying far away from. He seems radioactive, and I'm gonna wait until he shows any sign of form. But I think a lot of people will be in that. All right. In that camp with me. Like we could see him 5-6% owned for real.
I just want to point out, I just noticed it that of all of these cheaper guys, the one that Brady loves the most is actually Noah Gragson.
Yeah.
So
Gregson's in a good spot. He's got a lot of upside.
He doesn't, and his ownership projection.
He's been just crushing the 2 short flat tracks we've been to. It's like hard to deny where he's been running.
Not bad. So it's Noah Gragson as the potential. Noah Gragson and Killer Priest maybe as those SHR cars that we can kind of pay down for at slightly lower cost with some pretty good chances for upside. Steven Sturgill is asking, who's the smash driver of the week on FanDuel for tournaments?
Chris Buescher.
Buescher, yeah. I mean, isn't Buescher's kind of the crush driver of everything.
Well, place differential is very huge on FanDuel this week. I think this and Bristol are like the top tracks for place differential. And Buescher's 8,500 over there, starting 30th. Like that's really good. Byron and Bell are going to be popular on DK, but I think they'll be better plays on FanDuel overall. There's not like a ton of like big place differential to chase.
Byron and Bell both very expensive on FanDuel and DraftKings, but definitely on FanDuel as well. I'm looking here and there.
I do think they will stay popular.
Yeah, it's not a Byron.
Both Bell and Byron have some really strong cases for them.
Do you really like Bell and Byron here for DraftKings? Because it seems to me, like I said, you really can't play more than 2 of the studs in any particular lineup. And so you're a Larson Bell.
Yeah, I see the field migrating from Hamlin to those guys.
To like a Larson.
Which is kind of what makes me like, again, just comes back to that's what makes me like Hamlin. We've seen it kind of time and time again when Hamlin's the most expensive at a track he's really good at. If the pricing is tight, they end up migrating off of him. And it's like, why on earth is Hamlin leading this thing at 14% owned? Like that's my dream scenario here. Because like last week was like his best track, and he was only 24% owned because everybody wanted to play Larson.
Mr. 5 Cent asked about Gilly, who's a kind of a blast from the earlier part of the season.
Gilliland's been like, it's kind of weird for him because he's also like been good at this track. Like I think he had a top 10 in the fall. Like just a random really good run. He's had a few like other random like really good like sort of Justin Haley type randomness, where just kind of out of nowhere love like a top 10. Like damn, been fast, but we've been seeing that kind of a lot of different track types this season from Gilliland. He's been very surprising. So usually I'd write him off completely starting in the top 20. But when you compare him to how bad like the other plays are around there and how iffy they are, if he just stays in the top 15, has another like top 10 type day, I could see him doing all right, but he's gonna have like no ownership.
Gerald is asking about Priest and Gregson in the same line. I think that is
just stacking Stewart Haas is how you won this exact race last year.
Yeah, so, that's an emphatic
team stacking actually kind of in play this week for real.
Yeah, that's an emphatic yes, I would say. If one's doing well, the other one might be doing well, and they're in the same manufacturer, same team, so same starting position, like same price.
Yeah,
core play from Brady on Gregson. You got a big time play from Taco on Gregson. Everybody loves Killer Priest. Literally everyone loves that guy. Everyone. I have no idea what Killer Priest actually looks like though, facially.
Little dork.
Is he a little dork? Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen his actual face or the Killer Priest.
He doesn't win.
Never seen him either. How many DOMs? I don't know. I'm at least or most. You're doing at least one DOM.
If you're doing 150 and you lock at least 2, you are setting yourself up to get kind of screwed.
You can't
only if there's like a guy. Only if you have an early dominator that leads like 100 plus and then wrecks, or if we see a situation like from last year where Bell comes from 20th using pit strategy and leads the whole thing.
Technically, if you look at your sheet, Taco, Bell should be, and if you mark Bell and Byron as a dominator,
just mark Bell and Byron, and I think like,
and also, you've got Briscoe and Bubba marked as Dom. So like, I feel like if you mark those two as Doms and you wanted to be a little aggressive about it, and at least 2, I think is acceptable.
Yeah,
but I'll probably just run at least 1, and that's it.
Yeah, I like just at least 1 of like the guy starting in the very front, just to get the stage 1 guy.
Yeah,
but you can even make some without him. I could see like a lineup that's just Hamlin.
Yeah, if you consider Hamlin one of those
Hamlin
guys.
And then like Bell or something if Toyota's fast, or like Hamlin and Byron. I could see that working if it like is kind of fucky early on, or there's Absolutely.
There it is. So that's going to do it, guys. NASCAR Martinsville half-mile track, lots of dominator points to go around. Pick wisely.
Yeah,
Larson the chalk.
Not my favorite short track. Probably one of my least favorite. But
I'll only know that after the race.
Yeah, we'll still do well. But I would definitely prefer to just be Richmond again. Love me some Richmond. Love me some New Hampshire.
Everybody destroyed Richmond. Let's crush some Martinsville as well. I don't care. I just want to win the money.
Yes, sir.
All the monies. I wanted that elusive first place. Been hanging around second place a lot. I want that elusive first place finish. I feel it. I feel DFS Army helmets are going to be up there in these tournaments, as they always are. If you're watching this podcast and you enjoyed what you saw, smash that like button. Or if you're like teabagging time over here, smash the dislike button if you hate it. That's cool too. We appreciate you being here, watching the show all the time.
Oh, yeah, winner pick. Did I count as calling it last week because I wouldn't shut up about Truex, and Truex was like the fantasy play you had to have because he led the whole ass race, but technically Hamlin won. So I don't know. I'm big Hamlin though this week. I'm definitely a big Hamlin guy.
There we go. So you're on Team Hamlin for the win.
Yes. For team leverage.
You're not giving me a lot of juice here at 5 3/4 to 1.
Yeah.
Picking a likely winner.
Yeah, I think the only thing that makes him an underdog is probably just his price on DraftKings and then Kyle Larson existing.
I'm going to predict the Brady pick here, as I will take the Brady place as I read his notes and shit. And I think Brady is going to give us a long shot dice roll on Mr. Chase Briscoe.
Hey,
13 to 1 odds.
He's been flirting.
That is a classic.
I'll take his top 10 odds.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's a classic Brady play. 13 to 1 on Donnie Briscoe. So we'll see how that goes. But hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Good luck this week, guys. Let's see those helmets at the top of the leaderboards once again. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you next week. Deuces.
See you.